First thing I do for every stone is get it on the top and line it up with a flat lap like my 600 to make sure all the edges will line up well with the design that I'm doing. In this case it's pretty easy since it's a square piece. The design has square sides, so just line it up like that. Use the machine and set the depth so that the angle reads 90.1. I'll flip it over 180 degrees, check the other side, and I can see how centered I have it on the top. So the first one was 90.1, this is 90.24. So if I really wanted to, I could center that a little bit more, but I have a lot of extra room on this one, so it won't make that much of a difference. And then I'll do the same thing for the top, or ends I should say. I'll do the same thing for the ends. So we got 90.18 and 90.2. So that's really close. So that's pretty well centered. If it were a weird shaped piece of rough, I would actually cut a flat and then you can look at it and see which side needs a little more space. So this one's good to go. And we'll start cutting. So after I get the stone more or less centered, depending on how much material I have to remove, I will go from 600 and I will actually use something a little rougher. Large stones, I have a 100 grit, and for stuff that doesn't quite need that much, I have a was a 180, but it's worn down a little bit now, so it's probably something like 300. Just takes a lot of time off of removing extra material. I have my sponge to keep extra water from splashing all over the place because it can get pretty messy. So I always start with something of the profile. And in this case I need about a 14 millimeter point-to-point stone, and I have 14.4. So I have just enough. So I don't need to shrink these down at all, but I will do the corners. This is going to be like a rupee shape. I use a piece of gum rubber to spread water on rougher laps. I used to use my finger and I would grind off my finger over time. I suggest the rubber also because for the thicker laps you can kind of clean them a little bit, removes dust and stone debris from the diamond, and it'll keep them lasting a little longer. I usually run these a little slower when I do the girdles, just because this is down, it keeps water from shooting off and spraying your machine and getting into all the nooks and crannies. I'll switch between everything just to see how it holds its getting. Let me know if I need to adjust the stone yet. Hit all four corners just to Make sure everyone's going down evenly. Use two hands when starting a fresh facet on the rough grits because they can grab the stone and twist it right off the dock. Push too hard. Once you get it kind of started, you can go back to cutting like normal. Now, kind of get touched a bit, I'll take a peek and see how it's looking, and then go back around. So that took a little while just to get it there, and we need a point on each end, so I'm going to actually switch this to the 100 grit so we're not sitting here all day just getting the shape. So this is a solid lap. My 100 grit is what's called a topper. That's a very thin lap, and that needs to actually go on top of a solid lap. So I use these two together. Same thing, put the sponge back in. A little faster water drip for the coarser laps. Start slow. This using the gum rubber. You can see how it cleans the lap, especially on the edge where all the stone dust settles. And we'll just do it. Now the height I don't have to adjust because the new lap made it a little higher than it was. So you can see the dust coming off, but now way faster than the last lap. You do want to be careful when using the super coarse lap. Use a little extra tolerance, but in the meantime, look at how much faster that is. That was the same amount of material as that last lap, and it's already done. See, that was way faster. Now, I also know that I need about 7 millimeters in width. So I'm going to get that, touch each side. That side doesn't quite touch. Come here, a little off center. Sometimes a little bit just to make sure both sides are basically even off the top. We're going to be switching to the pre-polish lap now. For moissanites, I have a set of laps just for moissanites. Since it's such a hard material, if there's a small chip or any residue that stays behind, it won't scratch any other stones. Same as cutting, we're going to run it from girdle to tip. Try and keep it as straight as possible. Moissanite heats up extremely fast without water, so I have to constantly check the temperature and make sure that the heat doesn't get so high that the wax melts and the stone shifts or comes off the top. There's also quite a bit of difference between pre-polish and polishing lap flatness, so might have to adjust things a little bit. Just a quick touch to see where it's hitting. So it's definitely hitting a little different than the cutting lap, but it looks like I might have drifted on the cutting lap. So this lap is straightening it out. So moissanite is so hard that it doesn't really pre-polish like other materials. You won't have a perfectly scratch-free surface. You'll still see some frosting, some lines, but you're removing all of the deep scratches. And then on 100,000, it actually removes all that frost super fast. So I just pre-polish this to remove the deep scratches and move fast. It's just a little bit. So instead of going all the way around, we'll just do opposite facets. Since we know the meats are already good, pre-polish, we can just fine-tune things. So this one looks like I drifted as well. This lap is much flatter than my cutting lap, so this will straighten out that little bit of difference. Now we're going to polish. Pretty good. So we're flipping the moissanite over now, working on the crown. So first thing we need to do is line it up for the design. So this one's nice and easy. We have a big flat facet. So we're going to set it to 90 degrees. Lower the drip tray. Lower the stone down. Make sure just the stone is overhanging the lap. I lower it down until it's, you know, half a degree. Push down. We're lining up the 96 with the 96 facet. Press down, make sure it doesn't rock at all. Tighten it down. It's gonna be a lot harder when you have a bunch of small facets. This one's easy, it's only has 6 sides. So to make sure that I'm lined up, I'll raise it up a little and I'll lower the angle so it just rubs on the front edge. That way I'm not moving my facet around. We'll be cutting this off. Take a marker, mark the whole side. Even though you press down on it, you might, when it tightens, it might spin a little. And we'll lower it down so it's just touching. And then just on a dry lap, give it a few scratches. And what you want is a perfectly flat or straight wear mark through the marker. Then it's probably going to be straight. And that's perfect. So we can kind of go from there. Get the sponge in there. And set our first angle. And don't forget to clean off the machine where you're going to be sliding. Bring that into the center. And we're ready to start cutting. Now this first step we're going to be setting the depth of the girdle, or the thickness of the girdle. So there really is no set stopping point. We're just going to go until the girdle is as thick as we want. You can measure it if you want, or just eyeball it. I like medium girdles for moissanites because they actually are, while they're very hard, they can be very brittle and they can chip. So a little thicker girdle just kind of helps prevent chipping from prongs when they're set. I know it's going to be a bezel, I might go a little thinner. All kind of depends. Really is no right or wrong, other than super thick being not great and super thin being not great. A little too fast on the water. Yes. I could start with a coarser lap, but this isn't too much material to remove, although it is a pretty shallow angle. So we'll see how long it takes, and I might either go to a coarser lap or I might do a really steep angle just to remove a lot of material, and then it goes a little faster, more steps, but we'll see. Speed the lap up a little bit. Even though moissanite is super hard, it actually grinds fairly quickly. Kind of a brown, sludgy dust and stains everything. It's not very pleasant to cut, but it's moving pretty good, so we probably won't mess with it. Let's get through this first tier, and the next ones will be a lot faster. The reason I don't go straight to a coarser lap right from the start is they can chip, and sometimes a chip will come out further down than you want it to, and then it takes either longer to remove that chip, or sometimes you might just chip it past the point you want to and you ruin your entire stone. So I'd rather spend an extra 10-15 minutes doing this than risk damaging something, especially when we come this far and we're already on the top.
So you can see how yellow moissanite turns after cutting, especially white. So now my super secret whitening technique, and this one is done.